My Lightroom Classic catalog is a bit of a nightmare. I have best part of 7,000 photos, a little bit more, and they range from everything from landscapes to night photos, birds, auroras, and just about everything in between except maybe portrait photos. Now well, there's a few there I like. This can be a little bit of a headache to actually catalog. And whilst I try and keyword these, sometimes it's just too many to try and organize. So I've been using Excire Search to help manage my catalog, apply keywords automatically, and for search functions. Now, for full disclosure, before I get started, I am an affiliate of Excire. So they have provided me with a copy of this at no cost, but they have no say over what I do in terms of videos, no pre-vetting, and I'll show you the good and the bad for the software as I find it. So Excire Search is a plugin for Lightroom Classic, and it allows you to use AI to try and find and organize your photos a little bit more. Now, some people do get concerned about AI, and for full clarity, this doesn't use cloud-based AI. It's all done on your computer. So your photos aren't sent to a cloud service or the internet. That stays locally on your computer. And what the software does is when you import your photos, you could either tell it to automatically analyze them, or you can tell it to analyze them later through a process called initialization. And this basically goes through each of the photos and says, oh, okay, this is a photo of art murals on tanks, or this is a photo of birds on a branch, or this is a photo with people in it. And it does that so that you can later on search for other photos based on that. And there's a few ways that we can do this. So I'll start off with the simplest, which is let's search for similar photos to this. So I can search by example photo, and I can say I want to find similar photos to this, and I can change the similarity. So if I'm loose, it means it'll find a lot more that potentially don't relate. If I'm restrictive, it'll limit it to what it thinks that photo is. So in this case, I see that as birds on a branch. And if I go search, we see birds on thins. Now, as you can see, that's not a branch. Those are. So it is finding birds on branch, although that's not. But you can see it's not perfect. So sometimes it's going to find things that aren't related, bird on pole or something similar. But I think it's done a pretty good job of that. Now, if we do the same thing, and I'm just going to do it a different way, so we'll go library, plug in extras, search by example photo. If I make it more loose and start again, you'll see now I've got other photos with no branches. Now this is complaining because it's saying some of these images are in a stack that it hasn't analyzed. I'm just going to skip this for now, but I could just reinitialize them. And what you'll see is there's no branch in here. So because I've said be a bit looser with the match, it's finding things that don't relate nearly as well. Now we can also do some other searches. So before I was searching for things that were similar to that photo, but we can search by phrases instead. So we could say, be in flight near flower. Again, we want to potentially be more restrictive, and we go search, and we can see, oh, okay, there is a bee in flight near the flower. Now, like I said, it's not perfect. That's not in flight. This is a jumping spider that it's confused. But I think on the whole, when you consider it's gone through 7,000 odd photos and it's found 40 something where it's tried to analyze that and work out what it is, you'll see that there are definitely bees around flowers within this. There are some that aren't, so there's no bee here. These are birds. These have nothing to really do with it. jumping spider, but you can actually see that for the most part, it has done a pretty good job of finding things that are similar enough. And out of 7,000 photos, if I can narrow that down to 50 to quickly glance through and then say, oh, okay, that's a B or whatever else, that saves me a lot of time. Now, we can search for other things. And for example, I could say busker playing saxophone, because maybe I don't remember all the keywords. Maybe I haven't assigned keywords to my photos yet, so I can use text prompts. And I now see busker playing saxophone. Now, this is good because this is a very kind of unique photo, and it's not going to get nearly as confused as if it were a bee on a flower or something like that. Now, we can search for faces, we can search for text prompts, we can search for people, duplicates, and a whole range of different things within here. Now, I don't do a lot of portrait photos, so that is a little bit wasted on me. But what we could do is we could search for, let's say, text prompt, and we could say night photo at beach. And now it's giving all of these night photos at the beach. Now, some of them aren't perfect, but I think so far, yeah, here we go. So these are during the day, so it's got a little bit confused with that. But you can see this is a night photo at the beach. So is that. So are these. So it is actually finding through the catalogue related photos. Now, is it perfect? No. Does it still save a lot of time? I think so. I think it is very helpful for these kinds of things where you're trying to just cull through your catalogue and find other things. Now, you can search for duplicates and a whole range of things as well. I'm not going to in this video just because I don't want to slow down the video, the flow of the video, but just for reference. So when we search for duplicates, we could search for exact duplicates. So these are identical photos. Everything is exactly the same. And we could then search for near duplicates. So when I did exact duplicates, I don't have really any in my catalogue, so it didn't take too long and it didn't find any. Near duplicates, we can do this based on how similar they are to each other. So if we were to run this, it would search through the entire catalogue. Actually, let's run it. So I'll run this one now and we'll see how long it's going to actually take. Now, it depends on how big your catalogue is as to how long it takes. I've started this at about 8:33, and what I'll do is I'll skip through it towards the end and I'll make a note in the video of how long it actually took. So that's now done, and it's found a whole range of images that are fairly similar to each other. It found 451 groups of duplicates, and it's tried to group them together. So these are all beach, these are all, again, beach, aurora, and so on. Now, I could say be more tight or restrictive, and it would find less. I could say be less restrictive, and it'll find more that are similar to each other. But you can see it's a pretty handy tool to be able to go through and then cull potentially exact duplicates or things that maybe look fairly similar to each other and you don't think you want them all. Now, as I said, it's not perfect. It depends how restrictive you're going to be, but I've actually found when I used it, when I was using it for finding duplicates and I was looking for exact duplicates, it was great. Near duplicates, it depended on how strict you were, and you probably needed to be stricter rather than looser. And we could use a more accurate but slower algorithm, but I'm going to sort of move past this just for the video. So we've had a look at a few different ways to find photos. When we looked in here, we said we could do it by text prompt. So that's a really handy way. We could do it other ways. So we could say, show me by keyword, by example photo. So show me ones that are similar to this photo, and then we can process those. So these are all fairly similar to kind of night colorful photos. But one of the other things that I think is really cool is that we can search by what they call aesthetic. So if I go into the plugin extras and say, search by aesthetics, I can actually then search for what it thinks are my most aesthetic or least aesthetic photos. We can show how many we want to actually show up. And I'm just going to leave this on 10 and I'll go start. And it's searched through my photos and it thinks these are my most aesthetic photos. Now, I do agree. Out of the photos that I take, I would say these are probably the most aesthetic. What I've found is it tends to do it based on how colorful a photo is. I'm not exactly sure how the algorithm is working this out. And obviously it's very subjective. So you may say, well, actually, I prefer this other photo to the one it thinks is the most aesthetic. So it's one of those ones kind of grain of salt, but I would say in my mind, these are kind of my most aesthetic photos. And let's say I want to do more editing on photos like this, rather than searching for, oh, what date was that or anything else. This is where I think Excire is really helpful because we can go into library, plug in extras, and we can search by that example photo. And then I can have, oh, okay, here are all the similar photos that are kind of bright aurora photos that I can edit. Now, there are a lot of other things that this software can do, this plugin. I've only sort of skimmed the surface. You can use it a lot for portraits and people, finding how many people are in a photo, how many faces, potentially ages or age ranges, babies versus adults. But for me, I've found this really helpful for the keywording and also for being able to search by text prompt. So I think the real benefit to this software is that it integrates within Lightroom Classic and you don't have to jump in and out. Now, if you don't use Lightroom Classic, there is a sister program called Excire Photo, which is a standalone digital asset manager, which sort of encompasses all of the features for AI of Excire Search without the editing and everything else. So it may be worth having a look at that if you don't use Lightroom Classic. But if you do use Lightroom Classic and you want to look at how AI can potentially improve your workflow, it's worth having a look at software like this. Obviously, taking into account the limitations, as we've seen, that sometimes it'll miscategorize things and it's not perfect. But with, as I said, 7,000 odd photos in my catalog, anything I can do to save time and allow me to very easily find, for example, bridges is something that I think is really helpful. I can just do a very quick search, even if I haven't cataloged, I haven't keyworded things, because it understands what's in the photo, it can still look at that and say, oh, okay, here are your bridge photos. So do you use this? Is this something that you're interested in? If you're interested in looking at more of the initialization process, let me know and I can look at doing a video on that as well. Thanks for watching.